Hello, everyone, and welcome to another series of Bobble Pod. We kicked off last time with a series of websites, and today we're going to kick off with a series around SEO. But to begin, just to do some introductions, I'm Manni, CEO of Bobble Digital.
I'm Claire Daniels, CEO of Trio Media.
And I'm Anush, Mnatsakanyan, CEO of Burnby.
So welcome, everyone. We really hoped you liked our last series, limited edition. The feedback's been great. Do leave a review for this series as well. For this limited series, we're going to be talking about SEO in terms of what has significantly changed over the last 2 years. Again, following the same format in terms of the what is SEO, why you need SEO, how does SEO work, and then all of us as experts will leave our summary at the end in the 4th episode. So do get involved and do follow each episode along the way. So today's episode is about what about SEO. But before we get into that, just a quick reminder, do follow, like, and subscribe our channels across podcast audio, across Spotify, Apple, and podcasts on Google. And do follow us on YouTube to get the podcast elements of it. They release every Tuesday, so we hope you are looking forward to this series. So our second series is all about discussing the what, why, and how of SEO in terms of why your business needs SEO, how SEO can support your organic and online growth online. So we're going to start with the first element in terms of actually what is SEO and what does SEO mean?
Yes, so I can kick things off, but first of all, want to say a big happy birthday to Bobble Pod. So we're a year old now. Yay! So we've been going for a year. So thank you to everyone who's been listening since the first one that we did. We went live as part of Leeds Digital Festival in 2020, right in the middle of a pandemic. We pulled everyone together and we recorded our first episode. So really, really pleased to be here a year on, still producing content for you. So just to kick things off in terms of what is SEO. So I'm going to start at quite an elementary level, but we have a range of listeners tuned in. So just to make it clear for everyone. So SEO stands for search engine optimization, and it's basically the practice of optimizing your website or other online resources, it doesn't have to be a website, to ensure that it gets found and displayed by search engines. So you would do SEO if you're wanting to appear organically in Google, Bing, Yahoo searches. You know, you want to be on page one, you want to be at the top of listings. It can typically be broken down into kind of 3 rough areas. So content plays a major role in SEO. There's technical elements, so how well technically your website is optimized for things like speed and load time, and then link building as well. And I feel like link building gets a bit of a bad rep at times, but it still can be a very important part of an SEO strategy. And certainly when you've got elements that you can tie in, like online PR, where you can gain really high quality backlinks to your site, that can really, really help with improving your organic listings. So yeah, I don't want to kind of hog the mic too much. I think we can all kind of pass round. So why don't we just talk a little bit about the individual elements of SEO, just kind of dive into what each of those are a little bit more and what they can mean for you. Manni, how would you start off if a client needed some SEO? Where would you begin?
So you summed it up perfectly. We break it down to 3 key areas, which is technical, content, and links. So technical is all about, doing a technical audit of the website. So if a client came up to us and said, I want to understand more about SEO, what I can do to improve my SEO as a company, the first thing we would do is do an SEO audit. And the first thing we look at is the technical, because SEO ultimately, and it's really good that we follow on from a website limited series, is that it comes down to how good does your website perform technically to support the wider SEO elements in terms of content, outreach, and link building. And it's all about making sure that you forming guidelines. And the key things we look at is Google updates like Core Web Vitals. So Core Web Vitals was launched by Google early this year in June through to August 2021. And Core Web Vitals is all about how fast key elements of your website loads in terms of how quick is it for your website to be optimized from a desktop to a mobile, in terms of how things move on the site when someone's navigating, how fast is it for it to load when someone searches and goes onto your website. It doesn't take, seconds or a long time for all the content to upload, etc. So these are the key technical elements we look at in terms of the speed, in terms of how fast it is, in terms of how fast your website loads and how fast a user can get through your site. Also, how your site is technically structured. Does it have a sitemap that Google can then crawl. So crawling is something that Google does to help identify and recognize particular keywords that you rank for. So us, as well as Trio, we both dominate the top, the first page of, SEO agency leads, which is great. That's 20% of the market right there. That's all about key terms like SEO agency leads. So we have those keyword terms on our website, but it's structured in such a good way that Google can find it and say, right, anyone typing in SEO agency leads, they can find both Tree and Bobble because we rank there at the top. So it's the structural elements of your website as well as speed, such as, where is the headline, where is the title, and, how is the content structured all the way through.
Yeah, I think the keyword element is really important because, that comes into the content side of things. And, we'll always start with that when working with a client is actually understanding, well, what are those terms that you want to appear on page one for? And getting really specific about that. And what you can see a lot is that people might have good visibility, but actually not for the search terms that they want to be found for if they're investing in SEO because they're trying to reach a new market, or their content hasn't really been on point. And you see this a lot sometimes, like we incorporate blogging as a really important part of like the content side of an SEO strategy, because creating, long form content on a site with new pages that can then link back to your main reference pages can be really key. But actually some people will go off and create blogs, a lot of blogs about topics that aren't really relevant at all. And then you find that companies rank for these really, really niche search terms because they wrote a really long blog about it, but it was nothing to do with what their company does. So we often will use that and go, oh, look, you rank for all of these things. They go, oh yeah, we wrote a blog about that like 2 years ago. And they just happen to be on page one. I mean, we've got an example of that ourselves. I think from 3 years ago, someone had written a blog in the team about the marketing of FIFA 18. We were on page one when you search FIFA 18. So obviously as a marketing agency, totally irrelevant to us to be there. But it showed that the blog content, writing some long form content worked to get us ranking onto page one. So looking at actually what those search terms are. And I think there's always a fine line to tread. What I find where there's a bit of a difference is there's the search terms that as a agency we would recommend. We go away and we actually do our research. We've got tools that we use. For example, SEMrush is a really key tool that we use that allows us to look at what the keywords are that we should be looking at and the volume of monthly searches around those keywords. So we will always go away and do that research and put that in front of the client and go, based on your products and services, these are the related search terms and this is the volumes of them. But then there's always a little element when I'm talking to people of going, what are the things you're going to Google? Because sometimes there is an element of a vanity project of, even if no one's searching it, that business owner just goes, I just want to see myself top when I type that in. So there's an element of factoring that, because they're sat at home on an evening having a little Google, typing away, going, oh, I'm not top for that. And you might find they come back and you go, well, that's not what keyword that we're optimizing. So we always just add that in as well to be like, what's that one thing that's going to keep you up at night if you don't appear for? So the keyword research is a really important part of that. And obviously from a content perspective as well, the video side, Anush, having video content can be a really great, complementary element to an SEO strategy, can't it?
My colleagues extremely great explained what is SEO. That's why I will not go there. I will explain only maybe the video video part of which role video actually has for the SEO. If we go more like generically, we can just separate into two parts video SEO, one for let's say search engines and the one for YouTube, because they are working greatly together. If you optimize one, it will automatically optimize the other one as well. But each of them has their specifications, which I really want to share with you during this episode. So if we generically said, video SEO is the process of increasing visibility and rankings in search engines like Google. And YouTube SEO is a process of increasing visibility and rankings in YouTube search. So So video SEO helps to appear higher in search results and drive more traffic to your website. And there is a question always why it happens, because first of all, we all know that Google loves rich content. And by saying rich content, usually Google understands the content that includes both text, photos, and videos. So whenever you put any kind of video on your website, it usually understands as a rich content. And in the search request, it's kind of gives a signal to Google that this content is rich and it appears higher in the search results. Another thing is whenever you're putting a video on your website, it increases the dwell time and also lower the bounce rate. So basically, whenever someone is watching your video till the end, it means they are staying longer on your website. And that shows Google that this content is relevant and interesting for people. So they, after turning off even your video, they can watch another content because they are already interested. And it's also, it's not a secret that it's also shows higher in conversion rates, because some people are trusting you more when they are watching your videos. And that means they will buy after watching the video, which is again making the conversion higher. And finally, it lowers the bounce rate, which is also great because it works favor of your search SERP. So that's great having any kind of video. And the last thing that I would mention why you should have a video, because Google loves videos, so it automatically pushes your videos up in the search results, especially if you would be a bit, let's say, tricky. You can make your videos higher in the YouTube search, and it will help you again to appear in the Google search results as well.
A great example of that is, for any listeners, sometimes you got to think that Google is a tool there to help answer questions, and SEO supports that in a particular way. And sometimes when you're on Google and you type, what does PPC mean? You'll see a video come up as part of the search results, but that video Google will then recommend a particular section of that video that says, this helps answer that as a video element, as well as a search query at the top where there's a question and answer. So when we talked a lot about technical, we talked about content. So moving forward, video is going to be a key part of content SEO moving forward and optimizing that, because the second largest search engine after Google is YouTube. And you've got to consider both play a key role within content, but content on top of video is still your on-page content. But one thing that I want to help explain in terms of what is link building as well. So we've covered, technical as a top line, content and different elements of that. But link building is all about internal and external. So if you have a website, you want to make sure that if you're creating good quality content that helps answers questions and insights and gives people the information they're looking for when they're searching for those particular keywords that Claire alluded to, you want to make sure you keep them on site by linking them to other relevant content. So it might be like an FAQ page. It might be, another article related to that. So, great marketing campaign for FIFA 18, although the game went downhill after that. Here's the great marketing campaign for FIFA 19 and FIFA 20, going back years. So it's linking to each article because you're doing that every year as a blog piece, because it's driving traction. But the other key part, and probably you can help here, is because you do quite a lot of it, Claire, is that outreach, because it's all about domain authority. And I'm going to quickly explain domain authority. Domain authority is how Google, it's a market metric that looks at how well your website ranks in terms of how much authority does your website have. Google likes websites with a high domain authority. So if you have high domain authority websites linking, articles or pieces back to your website, Google's only going to like that because it means that your website and you are well trusted. Those website well trusted, that means the content being shared is better. So those related terms work better. But there's a big element of outreach when it comes to link building.
Yeah. And so from our perspective, the areas we focus is we'll do things, and, to simplify it for someone wanting to try it themselves, is initially doing things like directory submissions. There's all of these online directories that you can put your business into and get a link back to your site. It does always come back to this domain authority piece. So you get a rank out of 100. So ideally, you don't really want to be creating a link on a site that's got a poor domain authority or that has got a lower authority than your website has itself. And there are tools that you can use to check